Imagine waking up one morning to find an entire neighborhood built on your land, without permission. Now imagine the look on their faces when you take back what's rightfully yours in one unforgettable way. Stay until the end because this one gets crazy. Tell me which country you're watching from, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more insane HOA and Karen stories. It all started in a quiet valley surrounded by dense woods and rolling hills. The kind of place where time moved slowly and people knew who owned what. The land stretched over 40 acres, bordered by a small lake and an old dam that had been built generations ago. That land belonged to a man named Thomas Reed, a retired civil engineer who had inherited the property from his grandfather. Thomas had always planned to restore the place after retirement. The dam, the lake, the old barn, everything held memories of his childhood. But when he finally came back to begin rebuilding, what he saw left him speechless. His land wasn't empty anymore. Across the lower valley, where his property line used to run, stood 35 brand new houses, bright, modern, and completely unauthorized. Sidewalks cut across his pasture. Streetlights lined the path that once led to his fishing dock. And at the end of it all, a large stone sign proudly displayed the name of a newly formed community, Silver Creek Estates, managed by Silver Creek HOA. Thomas stood in silence, staring at the rows of homes, the manicured lawns, and the children playing in what used to be his meadow. It was clear what had happened. The HOA had either ignored or falsified the boundary lines during their development, swallowing up nearly half his property. For weeks, Thomas tried to stay calm. He gathered documents, pulled land records, and filed complaints. Each visit to the county office confirmed what he already knew. The land was his, legally and fully. But somehow, the HOA's paperwork claimed otherwise. It was clear they hadn't just made a mistake, they had stolen it. At first, he tried to reach out to them. The HOA president, a woman named Linda Chase, dismissed his claims completely. She told him that the homes were legally built and any errors could be resolved if he agreed to sign an easement and transfer the land for community benefit. In other words, she wanted him to hand over his property. But Thomas wasn't the kind of man to bow down to arrogance, especially not from people who built their luxury subdivision on his family's soil. He decided to take matters into his own hands, carefully, quietly, and completely within the law. His first move was subtle. He had an updated survey done by a private firm. The results were undeniable. Not only were 35 homes built over his boundary, but the community's main water supply came directly from his dam. The HOA had been diverting water from his lake into their pipelines without ever asking permission. That's when an idea began to form. He spent the next few weeks preparing. He reinforced the dam's control gate, ran maintenance checks, and made sure everything was structurally sound. He even consulted a hydrologist to ensure what he was about to do wouldn't cause flooding or property damage. Once everything was verified, he set his plan in motion. On a bright Monday morning, the HOA received a certified notice from Thomas's attorney. The letter stated, Silver Creek Estates had been built on private property and that all access to Reed Lake and its water systems would be terminated immediately. It gave the HOA 72 hours to respond or vacate the premises. Linda and her board ignored the notice completely. They laughed it off, assuming it was a bluff. It wasn't. Exactly 72 hours later, Thomas walked up to the old dam. The morning fog was lifting over the lake, and the sound of birds echoed through the trees. He turned the steel wheel on the control gate, slowly closing the valves that fed the HOA's underground water lines. The hum of water rushing through pipes began to fade. Within minutes, their supply was cut off completely. Back in Silver Creek Estates, homeowners began to notice. Faucets sputtered, sprinklers went dry, and swimming pools sat half empty. Panic spread quickly. The HOA board scrambled, sending maintenance workers to inspect the main supply station, only to find locks installed on every access point. Locks engraved with a nameplate, property of Thomas Reed. By the next morning, local news crews had shown up. The story spread fast. Homeowners left without water after HOA encroached on private land. Reporters gathered at the subdivision entrance as angry residents demanded answers. The HOA board tried to downplay the situation, but the county records told the truth. Every inch of land under those houses and the dam that supplied them legally belonged to Thomas. When the county officials arrived, they confirmed what Thomas had been saying all along. The HOA had built illegally on his property. Permits had been rushed, boundaries forged, and oversight conveniently ignored. The development company responsible for construction vanished overnight, leaving the HOA to face the consequences. Thomas didn't gloat. He didn't need to. His calm confidence said it all. A few weeks later, after a court hearing, the judge ruled decisively in his favor. The HOA was ordered to compensate Thomas for damages, illegal land use, and water diversion. The judgment also required them to restore parts of his property that had been altered. But that wasn't the end of it. The residents of Silver Creek Estates were furious, not at Thomas, but at their HOA. Many of them turned against the board, demanding resignations and refunds for the inflated community fees they'd been paying. Within months, the HOA dissolved completely. The neighborhood was left without leadership, maintenance, or reputation. Meanwhile, Thomas restored his land to its original boundaries. He reopened the dam under his control and made sure the new water access agreements went through the proper channels. To this day, he still owns every acre. And that lake, the same one the HOA thought they could take, now serves as a private retreat, fenced off and protected. Occasionally, he sees some of the former HOA members driving by, staring in silence at the sign that stands at the property's edge. It reads, "Private property. No access without permission of the landowner." Thomas never said a word to them again. He didn't have to. He had proven his point. Sometimes justice doesn't come with shouting, threats, or revenge. Sometimes it's as simple as turning a wheel, closing a gate, and letting nature take its course.